Thank you very much. So my portfolio is MEC Education, Sports, Arts, Culture, and Recreation. And maybe let me join in apologizing. I think we should have communicated better in making sure that we start on time, because we wanted to make sure that you also get a sense, because some of the colleagues here were asking for interviews last week around overcrowding, especially in Bovet. But we thought it's important because the overcrowding is not just in that school, so that you can understand what is the problem and the extent of the problem. And that's why on the 12th of April 2026, we provided a comprehensive outlook on the state of the education ecosystem in the Gauteng province. We gave a data-based analysis of the historical overview of basic education in the province, the provincial outlook of the basic education ecosystem, a summary of the Gauteng Department of Education 2025 to 2030 strategic plan, and our approach to stakeholder engagement. One of the key issues that we emphasize is that our education system is a microcosm of the broader structural challenges that confront Gauteng and South Africa broadly. It is characterized by interlinked structural factors that do not only derive their existence from the historical injustices of our society, but the prevailing environment where financial constraints exist alongside competing priorities in funding for teaching and learning, curriculum development, as well as infrastructure development and maintenance. These challenges are exacerbated by the exponential growth in learner enrollment arising from migration and rapid urbanization in Gauteng. In 1995, the province had 1,408,000 learners plus in its schools, a number that has increased to more than 2.8 million as of 2026. This represents growth of over double the numbers 30 years ago, and is also the highest growth level across all provinces in the country, with a continued rise averaging 2% a year, adding more than 50,000 learners annually to the system. Today, we want to provide an overview of the state of learner enrollment in Gauteng as of 2026, looking at overcrowding in our schools, the state of infrastructure, and the interventions that have been put in place by the Gauteng Provincial Government to address the challenges. There are 2,111 schools in Gauteng, 1,417 primary schools, and 694 secondary schools. The number also includes 38 schools of specialization. The total learner enrollment in primary schools is 1,472,257, while the total learner enrollment in secondary schools is 943,089 pupils. There are 579 oversubscribed primary schools, constituting 41% of all primary schools. Oversubscription in secondary schools stands at 442 schools, which constitutes 64% of the total, meaning 64% of our secondary schools are overcrowded as we speak to you. These numbers translates to 1,021 of the 2,111 schools operating far above the school capacity, representing 48% of the total schools in the province. For primary schools, the net provincial capacity represents 54,723 learner spaces, while for secondary schools, the net provincial capacity reflects a shortfall of 88,088 spaces. The challenge of oversubscribed schools exists alongside that of schools that are not at capacity. A school not at full capacity means that the institution has not yet reached its maximum allowable enrollment base on available resources, classroom space, and staffing regulations. It indicates that there is still physical room to accommodate more students. A total of 252 of the 694 schools are not at capacity. Between 2025 and 2026, the number of schools not at capacity decreased by 153, while the number of oversubscribed schools increased by 164. There are 15 education districts in the Gauteng province, namely Ekurhuleni North, Ekurhuleni South, Gauteng East, Gauteng North, Gauteng West, Johannesburg Central, Johannesburg East, Johannesburg North, Johannesburg South, Johannesburg West, Sedibeng East, Sedibeng West, Tshwane North, Tshwane South, and Tshwane West. Ekurhuleni North has got 163 public schools, comprising of 111 primary schools and 52 secondary schools. 84 of the 163 schools, or 52% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Ekurhuleni South has a total of 176 public schools, comprising of 116 primary and 60 secondary schools. 102 of the 176 schools, or 58% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Johannesburg Central has got 204 public schools, comprising of 146 primary and 58 secondary schools. 60 of the 204 schools, or 29% of the total schools in the district, operate far above capacity. Johannesburg East has got 125 public schools, comprising of 83 primary and 42 secondary schools. 74 of the 125 schools, or 59% of the total schools in the district, operates above capacity. Johannesburg North has got 150 public schools, comprising of 99 primary and 51 secondary schools. 53 of the 150 schools, or 35% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Johannesburg South has 106 public schools, comprising of 70 primary and 36 secondary schools. 72 of the 106 schools, or 68% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. The top performing district of our country, Johannesburg West, has 127 public schools, comprising of 89 primary and 38 secondary schools. 47 of the 127 schools, or 37% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Sedibeng East has 73 public schools, comprising of 50 primary and 23 secondary schools. 31 of the 73 schools, or 42% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Sedibeng West has 131 public schools, comprising of 88 primary and 43 secondary schools. 45 of the 131 schools, or 34% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Gauteng North has 48 public schools, comprising of 32 primary and 16 secondary schools. 26 of the 48 schools, or 54% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Gauteng West has 153 public schools, comprising of 102 primary and 51 secondary schools. 70 of the 153 schools, or 46% of the total schools in the district, operate far above capacity. Gauteng East has 164 public schools comprising of 111 primary schools and 53 secondary schools. 78 of the 164 schools, or 48% of the total schools in the district, operate far above capacity. Tshwane North has 139 public schools comprising of 90 primary and 49 secondary schools. 63 of the 139 schools, or 45% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Tshwane South has 192 public schools comprising of 131 primary and 61 secondary schools. 100 schools, or 56% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. Tshwane West has 160 public schools comprising of 99 primary and 61 secondary schools. 108 of 160 schools, or 68% of the total schools in the district, operates far above capacity. These statistics illustrates a picture of just how significant the challenge of schools operating over capacity in the Gauteng province is. Nearly all districts are affected by the reality, indicating that the issue is widespread and systematic rather than prevalent in just a handful of districts. The Gauteng residential townships and schools that are based in city towns are identified as high-pressure areas. Densely populated areas such as townships experience a high enrollment demand. This reflects the demographic profile of Gauteng as a province that contains the highest concentration of urban townships in South Africa. Gauteng's economic activity and urbanization drive this concentration and has direct implications for overcrowding in the province's schools. The high rate of in-migration to the Gauteng province and the rate of residential development, especially in the metros of Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni, cannot be disregarded. The persistent cost of living crisis that has been ongoing post-pandemic has had an adverse impact on the planning and delivery of education infrastructure. The current infrastructure delivery approach or model is not keeping up with the high demand and development rate experienced in the Gauteng province. The rate of supply and successful delivery of education infrastructure is lagging behind the demand and the supply for new schools infrastructure. Gauteng faces a deficit of at least 200 new schools to stabilize the system. Although the province repeatedly commits to building 10 new schools per year, many projects are behind schedule, increasing reliance on temporary classrooms as a short-term measure. At the core of the issue is resourcing. Education resourcing in Gauteng is under strain due to rapid enrollment growth, infrastructure backlogs, and fiscal constraints. While the allocation has increased to over 70 billion, it remains insufficient relative to demand and inequality across schools. A rising wage bill for educators consumes a large share of the budget, leaving limited funding for learning materials, maintenance, and new infrastructure. In addition to this, current budget for new schools, enrollment-driven demand, and replacement of stolen or damaged items remain insufficient. The 2026 School Readiness Audit identified furniture shortfalls linked to growth and damage. This includes 67,855 chairs and 25,990 double desks in primary schools and 111,333 chairs and 98,115 single desks in secondary schools. The Gauteng Department of Education delivered available stock from warehouses, but shortages remained and additional procurement was required. Procurement is currently underway, but funding remains insufficient to eliminate the backlog. Frequent replacement needs and delayed deliveries continue to worsen the situation. There is misalignment between primary and secondary schools in the province, resulting in an increasing number of secondary schools becoming oversubscribed. There are 1,417 primary schools, whilst there are only 694 secondary schools, a proportion of 67% and 33% respectively. This misalignment has a negative impact on the entry capacity and school capacity in the secondary schools. Thus, 14 of the 15 districts indicates oversubscription in secondary schools, with the Sedibeng East District as the only exception. With secondary school oversubscription of 88,008 learners, an estimated 83 additional full schools are required to address the current demand based on a standard model of 30 classrooms per school with 35 learners per classroom. The infrastructure risks identified in 5 districts indicates that not all learners may be placed for the 2027 academic year. The analysis highlights a growing mismatch between learner demand and available school capacity in key urban and township areas. The report underscores the need for targeted planning interventions, including expansion of school infrastructure, improved learner distribution strategies, and long-term education infrastructure planning to ensure equitable access to quality education across the province. Insufficient budgets to meet the current backlogs within the short-medium term, vandalism of infrastructure, schools that are built on precarious dolomitic land, crime within communities necessitating security interventions at schools are significant problems. Business forums and community disruptions also adds to the delay of school infrastructure delivery. Additionally, municipalities are forced to defer the cost of bulk contributions for provision of basic services to the education sector to compensate for the unavailability of basic services, which in turn exacerbates the service delivery challenges within communities in which the schools are located. Furthermore, the current infrastructure delivery model is not aligned to the Gauteng migration scenario. The model does not yield key systemic failures feature poor contractor performance without consequences, inadequate planning and fragmented reactive maintenance. This creates massive budget overruns, unfinished projects and service delivery delays. The recent introduction of the project readiness metrics, a tool that will aid in ensuring that projects comply with building regulations, meet quality standards and stay on budget, will go a long way in addressing some of these persistent challenges. The total budget for both new and replacement schools over the medium-term expenditure framework amounts to 3.9 billion, which allows for the construction of approximately 7 new schools each year and 23 in total over the MTF. Within this period, 1.9 billion is allocated specifically for new schools, whereas the budget for replacement schools stands at 1.8 billion. The Gauteng Department of Education is accelerating the delivery of the brick and mortar schools through various programs and partnerships. We are working with the Development Bank of South Africa on projects geared towards the construction of new and replacement schools in high-pressure areas. 15 projects have been identified across the 3 metros, while 1 project has been identified in the West Rand region. We also have the budget facility for infrastructure schools program, in which the Gauteng Department of Education and the Gauteng Infrastructure Financing Agency have partnered to implement prioritized new and replacement projects identified within pressure areas. This comprises of 18 projects on greenfield sites across all municipalities in the province. We are also exploring the public-private partnership infrastructure delivery model as a viable solution to address the backlog. Additionally, through the self-build program, the Gauteng Provincial Government has also introduced an additional classroom program that in essence provides for schools to manage the construction of additional classrooms. We are also exploring buying privately owned former missionary schools that are still in good condition and comply with regulations, norms, and standards. This involves the reopening of schools that were previously decommissioned. Whilst not desirable, we are currently also supplying prefabricated temporary classrooms to alleviate the increasing pressures whilst awaiting the completion of brick and mortar facilities. The Gauteng Provincial Government intends to provide new public school infrastructure on allocated zoned and full services sites within mega human settlements development prioritized by the Gauteng Department of Human Settlement. The Gauteng Provincial Government has a 20-year plan for infrastructure that centers a formulated infrastructure planning framework for the Gauteng Department of Education. The plan is based on long-term population projections, education targets, municipal spatial plans, available structure, and land suitability. We are also preparing a plan for the provision of new public school infrastructure within identified and earmarked inner city regions and central business districts of the province. The Gauteng Provincial Government is prioritizing a combination of interventions that are aimed at resolving education infrastructure delivery delays to address oversubscription, which leads to school overcrowding. We implore the private sector, a critical stakeholder in the education ecosystem, to work closely with us in this endeavor that will bear fruit for all residents of Gauteng and build a stronger, sustainable economy that benefits all. We urge parents and the public to assist the government in protecting schools. Working with law enforcement, the public must play a meaningful role in guarding against education infrastructure vandalism, theft, and school construction site disruptions that are being carried out by forums that are undermining the future of our children. We must all work to ensure that the limited resources in education are utilized optimally, efficiently, and effectively.
Thank you, MEC and the panel. Colleagues, we are going to open a round of hands. You are going to introduce yourself and the media house you come from. And then afterwards, after the press briefing later on, the MEC will allow yourselves to come for interviews. Thank you. And number one, Heidi. ENCA, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Please press your mic, number 1, ENCA.
It's Heidi Jokas from ENCA. No, don't worry, it's okay. MEC, I just want, if you can give me an overall figure of perhaps how many schools are needed in the province. Schools, yes, in the province. And is it more primary schools or high schools? Thanks.
Refilo Mekwa, SABC Radio News. MEC, you conducted an oversight visit earlier on at Bovet Primary School. Can you just get the outcome, please?
Neria Shakotsa from the SABC. Okay. Oh, no, my colleague has asked that with regards to Bovet, so I think you will give us an outcome. Also, please add on that the fact how many pupils are at Bovet as we speak. Last time the parents were counting something above 2,000. Please confirm the numbers. And then there's another school in Windmill in Ekurhuleni. It was meant to start operations today to alleviate Windmill Park in Ekurhuleni. It was meant to start operations today. It was built, finished last year. Obviously, the concerns there from the area or the community was that there's this school that children are overcrowded. Also, there's a multi-million rand school that's not operating. Update on that, please. And with regards to the decommissioned schools. When are you planning perhaps to start taking them back? I know there's one in Diepkloof, which has since turned into a residential area where residents have now occupied the school. What's the plan from the department with regards to those schools? When do you think you'll ultimately take them back and turn them, in fact, into schools again?
Good morning, Alpha Ramushwana here from Eyewitness News. MEC, you mentioned that a chunk of the budget is taken by the wage bill and that leaves almost nothing for infrastructure and other priorities. How then do you plan to address this imbalance? Could it be retrenchments or could it possibly be fighting for a boost in the education budget? Thanks.
Good morning, MEC. Steven Siakwe from Mapepeza Media. My question is regarding the teachers and the shortage of. We just want to address that. Is something part of the department's plan to actually address the number of teachers, because teachers are actually now handling those number of. Like, teachers are overwhelmed by these classes. So we just want to address, is there going to be an additional number of teachers coming to the schools that are overcrowded? Thank you.
$200 schools. 200. To build 200 schools, you'll need 35 billion. Yes, you'll need 35 billion rands, and our budget currently is 70 billion rands. 52 billion of that money goes to salaries of educators. 8 billion of that money goes to schools directly. That's one of the things that causes problems in the schools. And there's tenders there and there's programs. And I spoke about this when I dealt with the state of education. So already I have given you the outline of our budget, and we need 35 billion. So what we need to do is to think outside the box and say, how do we deal with these pressures? So we're looking at triple Ps. Triple Ps, because if we get people who would say we'll build 100 schools for you now, in, let's say in the next 2 years, because it takes about 12 to 18 months, I think, to build a school. And they say, we build the schools for you and you will pay us later over a longer period. That's what we're looking at, because as you have heard in our numbers, we can only build about 7 schools with the budget that we have per year, and 23 in the next 3 years, when in fact we need 200 schools. So that's the first issue that we need to understand, and that's why we will have more of these conversations, because we want everyone in society to understand the magnitude of the challenge that we're dealing with. But secondly, in dealing with the issue, yeah, so I think I've answered your question, Heidi. Let me leave it there. And then, Refilwe, were you there? Akaubon. I didn't. Akaubon. Oh. Yeah, no, we met there. We went to meet with the school governing body. Fortunately, they were there. And one of the most important things we said to the school governing body is that we don't want any school to be disrupted. There is no excuse for disruption of learning and teaching, even under the difficult circumstances. Whatever we do, we must make sure that our kids are in class, learning. And we appreciated the role that the parents are playing in working with the school in resolving the challenges. We will then got a briefing that there's about, yes, the kids are more than double what they're supposed to be, about 2,000, which it's not desirable. And then we had a walk about to look at what options are there. There's few options that we have identified, but in the immediate, by next week, we will bring prefabricated classrooms just to ease the pressure. But we have also looked at the space which is used for cooking and preparing of meals. How it's located, it's not desirable, and we said they would have to allocate that space, and then it can be repurposed for something else. There's a piece of land that is vacant which could be used to decongest, but we are told that the ownership is not yet confirmed, whether it's the municipality or private owner, but we will definitely like to use that space to immediately decongest. But also, we are looking at the long term, which the district is looking at the issue of whether we can create or allocate the learners to the other schools, and that might mean 1 or 2 schools creating Xitsonga and Shivenda language and all that. So we're looking at it holistically. But Alexandra is one of the 45 communities we will be visiting to have community meetings, because we want to make education a societal issue. And that's why we have identified 3 schools per district. That gives you about 45. Those are the schools, the communities that we will be visiting, meaning the MEC of Education, Sports, Arts and Culture will definitely be in at least 45 communities, talking to them about issues of education. It's a very difficult task. It's not going to be easy. And we understand that we have to talk to the communities in order to resolve these issues. Neria, I think I dealt with the issue, Bovet, Yabana. And then windmill in Eguruleni, yes, in fact, we spoke about the school last week. There were challenges about occupation certificate. In fact, there was an issue about dolomatic land, and we had to get the Geoscience Council to come and help give an opinion. That's why the school was built, but they could not come in. So the report we got is that the school is ready now.
Last week Thursday we got the occupation certificate.
Yes, we got the occupation certificate last week Thursday, and the school will be occupied by the learners. But the other report I got was that doesn't solve the problem. That's why we'll still need to use 2 schools. And the reason why we were painting a picture, if you look at our statement, we are painting a picture and giving you a full explanation of what is the problem, so that we don't deal with issues in bits and pieces. We understand what we are dealing with, because if we don't have a perspective and an understanding about the magnitude of what we are dealing with, we will not be able to resolve these issues. And that's why we understand that there are issues that could be resolved in the immediate, there are issues for medium, and there are issues for long term. The decommissioned schools, I think there are 17. Yeah, we've got 17 that we have identified. We are working on it, and where people have illegally occupied, we'll have to approach the courts, we'll have to evict and take it from there. So there is a process of looking at those decommissioned. But we also have, how many schools? The Catholic, is it Catholic?
10 that are available.
Yeah, so there's also 10 schools that are available from the Catholics, which they have been decommissioned on their part, that we're looking at, and if we can buy those. And so we have a multi-pronged approach in dealing with this issue, because we have an appreciation that it's a huge challenge. So we are not going to be retrenching anyone, Alpha. In fact, if anything, we need an additional 340 educators. So we don't have the luxury to retrench educators. What we need to do, which is what we're doing in the medium term, is to look at the resources that we have, our budget, and look at how do we repurpose them, and how do we ease pressure on the system, because the fiscus is not able to intervene and help us in the immediate because of the challenges that we all know, including e-tolls. So what we are doing is to look at what we have, how do we repurpose it, and that's why there are about 4 areas that we have identified which we would want to use our resources differently. And that includes scholar transport, school nutrition, building of schools, and e-learning. So those 4 areas, if we do things differently, we will be able to have a bit of resources that we can redirect to other curricular related issues. So that's what we are doing. If you ask whether we have a way out of this, because when we paint this picture, it's scary to think that there's so many schools that are overcrowded and that we need 35 billion to solve the problem immediately. So we're looking at that. So I've answered your question, Steve. We need 340 educators, and then we will take it from there. HOD, Chief Director, is there anything I've left that you'd like to add? Yeah.
Thank you, MEC. Is there any further questions, follow-up questions? Yes, please.
Just for clarity, do you have an idea in terms of the teacher-learner ratio in the province, since you mentioned the overcrowding?
What is it?
So it's 1:38 at the system level.
We're supposed to have 1:30.
It's supposed to have 1:40 in primary schools and 1:35 in
Secondary. So the policy says it's supposed to be 1:40 in secondary and 1:35 in high school. But unfortunately, as we have painted the picture, that's not the case. You've got kids that are 89 in a class or 70. That's what we are dealing with. Thanks.
Thank you, MEC. I'm not seeing any further questions in our WhatsApp groups and other platforms. Want to thank you, colleagues. I appreciate you for having arrived. The MEC